The Bible's Hidden History. Today's guest is Mauro Biglino, one of my favorite people on the planet. We are getting ready to give you a masterclass in all the things you thought you knew about the Bible. If you've ever wanted to truly understand who the real characters are within the Bible, what's actually going on, their literal translations, understanding the ancient Greek and the Latin and the Hebrew, all of this is crucial for you to draw an educated conclusion from all the things that are happening. We go over so much. Noah, Jesus, Yahweh, the Elohim, all of this stuff that you probably have not run across. Leave us a like for that, my friend. Subscribe. Check out all the rest of our channels and all of our stuff. Check out our Rumble, 𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 right there for some more exclusive stuff. And we will catch you on the jump. Enjoy the podcast.
𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏.
Mauro Biglino, it is a pleasure as always. I'm a big fan. You know this already. We've already done one podcast. How are you doing and what's new?
First of all, thank you for having me here in your podcast. I'm very happy. And I thanks you and your audience, of course. We will speak about my work and especially about one of my book in English. And if you want, I can tell you briefly my history as a scholar and biblical scholar.
Please.
Because I think it's important that the public knows my methodology. Because methodology is fundamental in order to understand what the Bible literally says. First of all, I apologize for my English,
No.
which is
great.
very, very basic. So,
No.
so I hope to be able to make me understood by your by your audience.
For sure.
And now I become a biblical scholar because I started with my high school studying ancient languages such as Latin, ancient Greek, and after I felt the need to study the language in which is written the book of the religion in which I was brought up. So I studied ancient Hebrew with scholars of Hebrew community in my town, which is Turin. And after I started to translate only for my personal passion, only for me. But what happened? What happened is that the main Catholic publishing house in Italy and one of the most important in Europe, 𝗪𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗏 Edizioni, who works under the Vatican, noticed my translations and called me, asked me to have a meeting, and gave me the task to double check their work. And first of all, I had to double check the Greek version, the Latin version, and after they gave me the task to translate, and I translate for them 17 books of the Old Testament that they published with my name, of course. And after this work, during this work, I found what, in my opinion, of course, were mistakes, mistranslations, inconsistencies, and I sent them this information, and they asked me, they answered me that I was absolutely right. And so we had this collaboration for many, many years. When I started in 2010 to speak in public and to write my first book, in which I put these inconsistencies, these mistranslations, they fired me immediately because they said that I went too far from the traditional translation of the Bible. And so since 2010, I continued to work only for myself, for my own passion, and started writing my first book. And after that, this book became a bestseller in Italy, of course, because this book was in Italian language. And after this book, I wrote other 16 books. And now, from now, since 3 years, I started to write in Italian, and after to translate in English some of these books, in order to have a book in which, like this, in which I put some of the main topics of my work. And so I am here.
𝗪𝗚𝗟𝗏.com, exclusive content and programs on manifestation, making money, hidden knowledge. Finally, reach your full potential. You've had quite the journey, and something we didn't get to speak on last time that I'd been wanting to talk about, because it's very important. You found some mistranslations, or what you believed to be mistranslations. You were doing these for your own pleasure and passion originally. And so one of the things that I find most important as someone who is a lover of languages is, what were the source materials? You had to teach yourself, or you had to learn ancient Hebrew and ancient Greek. What sort of source material did you have available to you? Have you been inside the Vatican Library before? Are these fully available online at universities? What sort of source material did you have that you were pulling from that allowed you to find these mistranslations?
Oh, these mistranslations, I found them in the Hebrew language, because there are some words that are translated traditionally on dependence on the demand of the theologians, because the Hebrew language is a concrete, very concrete language, and the Semitic culture and also ancient Hebrew culture didn't have a concept metaphysical, transcendent, spiritual. It was their concept were absolutely practical, material, and I found these mistranslations also double checking the translation in Greek, in Latin, and in Hebrew. The ancient translators in Greek, for example, for their translation, used the Greek philosophy, and without Greek philosophy, Platon and so on, new Platonism and so on, the Bible is not spiritual. Is absolutely and only a complete historical book who tells us the relationship between the people of Israel with Yahweh, who was its governor. And Yahweh is not a spiritual one, but it's individual in flesh and blood. And if one reads the Bible without the glasses of the theologians, one can absolutely understand that the Bible doesn't speak about a spiritual God. I want to give you a precisazione.
Precision. You wanted to be
Precision
exact.
or precision.
Mm-hmm.
I don't questioning the existence of God. It's not my concern.
Mm-hmm.
I only want to say in my work about this book. And this book doesn't speak about God, but God can absolutely exist. It's not a problem with that I deal in my books. The faith is a personal choice, and I don't speak about about the faith, about God. I only want to tell what the Bible really says in its concreteness.
And the most interesting thing, though, I find about it, and we talked about it last time, when you're looking to have a literal translation and to just simply translate the words and let us know what they are actually saying within the context of their existence and what's happening there. We talked about Elohim, right? Which is one of the things that continues to be one of the most interesting aspects of this, is that Elohim, if I'm understanding this correctly, was translated generally as God, but the word is plural, and it speaks of many. And that while you do say, of course, that you're not going against anyone's faith, this changes things, no? Does this not change the story? Shouldn't people want to understand that perhaps it was talking about something completely different? I think this question is so important. So, maybe if you could just get us an understanding, a brief understanding, at least. I know we've discussed this at some length, but what do you find to be the biggest mistranslation in all of what you've found?
Oh, you are absolutely right, because the term Elohim is the main topic of the Bible. Because if Elohim is God, the Bible is a religious book. If Elohim doesn't mean God, the Bible is entirely another thing. And it's clear, in my opinion, of course, that Elohim doesn't mean God. And if you read the Bible with this concept, you can find that the Bible is a very clear historical book. Elohim is a plural term, which is always translated in a singular form, God. But what's important is to read the term God in the Bible. We have a tone, of course, because we find always God in the context in which this term is put. Because the term Elohim has a meaning which actually is a noun. Its meaning is a noun. So I suggest to let it untranslated. And so where I suggest, for example, to read the Bible, and when we find the term God, we have to substitute the term God with Elohim, and we leave Elohim, and so we read the Bible for what it is, because the term the Bible is clear that the Bible knows many Elohim. In my work, I found at least 23 Elohim in the Bible, and the Bible knows and tells us also the name of many other Elohim, like 𝗪𝗂𝗯𝗀𝗏, like 𝗪𝗂𝗛𝗀𝗏, like Dagon, like Rimon, like Asherah, and all these Elohim in the Bible have the same characteristics of Yahweh. The Bible tells us also the name of the chief of this Elohim. In Deuteronomy 32, for example, the Bible talks us about Elyon, which is always translated the highest. But Elyon is not a superlative term, but means simply who stay above, the chief of the Elohim. The Bible, for example, translated the Bible write, for example, El Shaddai, a term which is always the Almighty. But the scholars, all the scholars know, and often is written in the footnotes of the Bibles, that all scholars know that El Shaddai means the Lord of the desert or the Lord of the mountains, not the Almighty. But the theologians had the need to introduce in the Bible some spiritual, transcendental concepts, and so they continue to translate the Almighty. But this is clearly, without no doubt, is a mistranslation, is a mistake, but is a mistranslation inserted in order to introduce a spiritual concept.
And one of the things that is most controversial, I think, about this, we didn't get to talk about, because already what you're saying here essentially is that we potentially have not a god, obviously, potentially beings, let's leave it at that, individuals of some nature who have a hierarchy of some kind. But there's a term that you have in the book, people of property, which I know is a controversial one as well, because the chosen people, you touch on this. Could you explain potentially what the mistakes could be around the words the chosen people?
The chosen people. Before, I quoted Deuteronomy 32. In this chapter of the Bible is written that Elion, i.e. the chief of the Elohim, subdivided the earth in many lands, in many territories, and attributed each land to each Elohim. One land, one Elohim. One land, one Elohim. And in that occasion, the Bible says that Elion attributed to Yahweh the family of Jacob. Only the family of Jacob. This is a fundamental concept, because Elion didn't attribute all of the Hebrews, but only one family, Jacob, with his 12 sons. So we have the proof that Yahweh was one of the Elohim, also because in the same passage of the Bible is written that Yahweh was the governor of the family of Jacob and did his work alone, without the help of other Elohim. So the Bible says clearly that there were many Elohim, but Yahweh ruled over this family alone, without the help of other Elohim. And Yahweh chose or keep these people as people of priest, i.e. these people had to work and for him and have to worship only him, because they were a people of priests, and they had to solve his needs, his necessity. So the food, the drink, because the Bible says that Yahweh, but not only he, also all other Elohim, loved drink alcoholic beverage. But this is an history very interesting, because also the people of the Middle East, when talking about their divinities, tells us that they loved the alcoholic drink. For example, Sumerian, Assyrian, Akkadian, and so on. they wrote that their divinities loved to drink beer, for example. And instead, in the Bible, is written that Yahweh loved to drink shachar in Hebrew language, and shachar means alcoholic beverage. We don't know if was beer or wine, for example, but Yahweh wanted from 2 to 5 liters of shachar every day.
Who I was going to save this question till the end, but I find it so interesting because if you're saying the Assyrians and the Sumerians, for instance, have stories of their divinity, of their, of their divine beings being interested in alcohol, and then comes along this other, let's say, religion or, the works of the Bible, and there's a desire to want to shape and change this narrative. Who is making this narrative? Who started to shift the stories from what was potentially even more ancient societies to the one that we are starting to have, from the theologians? Was that the Romans? Was that because of a desire to have a monotheistic, a religion? Who's controlling that narrative? And the only thing that I would want to know from who's controlling it is why then today? Because if you came along and said something different, and they said no, what is the point of controlling that narrative? Why?
But it's important to know that the Bible is a sort of summary of a wider amount of laws in the Middle East, and as the Bible is a sort of brief version of these laws, and the Bible had a characteristic because while the other people like Sumerian, Assyrian, Babylonian, Roman, Greek didn't have the necessity to affirm a sort of monotheistic religion, the Bible, after the exile of Babylon, has been written by the priest, by the rabbi, the masters of the people of Israel, who wanted to introduce before Yahweh as the most important of the divinities, and after they introduced the concept of monotheism. But the Bible is not a monotheistic book. I would say the Bible is a monotheistic book. So we know that monolatry is means to worship one among a multiplicity. And in effect, also in the Bible, is often narrate the continuous contrast between the various Elohim, which were always fighting each other against each other in order to conquer other lands to rule over. After that, with the help of the Greek philosophy, the translator in the Bible in Greek before and after in Latin, they used the concept of the Greek philosophy, like I said before, and using the Greek philosophy, they introduced the monotheism in the Bible. But this is absolutely wrong because the thought of ancient Hebrews, of ancient Semitic people, is not monotheistic and is not spiritual, just like instead is spiritual the thought of Plato, of the new Platonism. And without this Greek philosophy, we could not have the monotheism in the Bible. And in one of my previous book, I made a comparison between the deities, the Elohim, and, for example, the deities of the Greek and of the Romans. And if you read carefully the Bible, literally, i.e., for what it is, you notice that these deities, these divinities, as substantially the same individuals, or at least are individuals who have the same characteristics. They have the same needs, for example. They are all individuals who are absolutely human-like, absolutely similar to humankind. They walk, they drink, they suffer, they get dirty, they have the need to wash themselves, they can die. And also that is written in the Bible, in Psalm 82, is clearly written that the Elohim die. They had a long life, a much longer life, but they at the end die like humankind.
Does this apply also then to Jesus?
Well, Jesus is history very difficult to narrate because we have the Gospels, which have been written after the St. Paul letters. And St. Paul elaborated for the Greeks a particular theology. And the Gospels are dependent on this particular theology. So we can't be sure of the personality of Jesus. For example, the so-called Black Pope of the Jesuit tells that at the time of Jesus there were not recorders. So we can't be sure of what he really said. And in fact, my methodology is to pretend that the Holy Book, the Bible, the Old and the New Testament, to pretend that they are true. But to pretend, because I'm not sure. No one can be sure. Also, because we have many versions of the Bible, we have many versions of the Gospels, and nobody knows which is the true one. But if we want to believe to gospels, we have to know that when Gabriel met Mary, maybe happened something strange. Why? Because according to the studies of the Jesuit, who was a cardinal, who was academic of France, was professor of theology, Jean Danielou, he says clearly, he writes clearly that Gabriel is that the Holy Spirit is the Christian transposition of the Gabriel who is present in the Old Testament. And in the Old Testament, when Gabriel goes to Daniel to carry some sort of information, the Bible in Hebrew clearly writes that Gabriel was an ish, i.e. a man, a male, who arrived to Daniel, who arrived tired. So Gabriel was at least an individual similar to humankind. And Gabriel, in effect, is not a personal name, but is a functional name, Gever of El. El is the singular of Elohim, and Gever of an El means a power of an El, or someone who exercises the power for an help. So the birth of Jesus is a very strange account. And Jesus, in effect, can be defined a demigod. For example, the Saint Justin Martyr, who wrote 2 apologies, sent them to the Roman emperor. Saint Justin tells that Jesus was absolutely similar to the demigods of the so-called of the other people, especially Roman and Greek. There was no difference between Jesus and other demigods. But also the literature of Akkadian, of Sumerian, and Babylonian knows the existence of these demigods, i.e. the sons of a so-called god and a human woman. Of course, these gods in the other populations are called with other names. For example, are called Anunna, Anunnaki. In Greek, they were called Theoi. In Latin, they were called Dei. In Asia, in India, for example, they were called Deva. In north of Europe, they were called Ezi or Ezir. In Meso and South America, they were called Viracochas, and so on, because all are described in the same method, with the same characteristics. And this is very important to know, because these are very concrete histories. I don't like use the term myths. I would prefer to use the term histories, because if
Well,
consider that tales as real concrete histories, all these accounts which are present all around the world becomes clear without contradiction.
right. And that I find very, very, I don't want to say troubling. I find it very interesting that there is such a cohesive element to a global ancient past, especially within divinity. And there is another character from the Old Testament that I want to ask you about, because this is also one of the most controversial and talked about events of the Old Testament, which is, who exactly was Noah and what was the Great Flood? What was exactly going on there, based on your understanding then?
Oh yes, all around the world there are more than 600 tales about the flood. And the flood narrated in the Bible is the same narrated in the Sumerian laws. We in the Bible we have Noah with his family. In the Sumerian laws and Akkadian laws we have Diosudra or Utnapishtim, which are the same as Noah. And so this account of the great flood must be true, because it's narrated not only in the Middle East, but also in South Africa, also in America, also in Asia, and so on. The Greek knows the great flood, and the archaeologists are finding many constructions who are under the sea, 90, 100 meters under the sea. And so this construction must have been submerged at the time of the Great Flood. So we had also the archaeological proof of the ascent of the water of the sea. Sorry, but if we are talking the sea, you before asked me about mistranslation. I have in mind now that the Bible talks about the exit of the people of Israel from Egypt. And in all the Bible,
Yes.
we have a tome is written that they crossed the Red Sea. This translation depends on the translation of the Greeks, who translated the Hebrew term Yam Suf as with the term Red Sea. But in Hebrew, Yam Suf doesn't mean Red Sea. Yam Suf means sea of reeds, a sort of swamp. So the water was 1 meter, 1.5 meters high, and just like is written in the Bible, a wind blowed during all the night and make to emerge the dry ground. The people of Israel crossed using this dry ground, and when the wind ceased, the water came back to their position, and the Egyptians were stopped by the water, and instead the people of Israel was already passed. But this is not a miracle, absolutely. It's a natural phenomenon which were known at the time. Moses, of course, knew that phenomenon, but in 1860, when the English army was in that place, i.e. the northeast of the Nile, the Nile, the unofficial named Alexander Talloch wrote in his diary that and during the night blowed a strong wind, and this wind divided the waters of Sea of Reeds, and the inhabitants, Arabians, inhabitants of this place crossed avanti e indietro,
They went back.
back and forth, on dry ground. So is a natural phenomenon, and this is another example of the completeness of the tales of the accounts of the Bible. So it's not necessary to think a miracle, because they used a natural phenomenon.
Speaking of that, though, because there is one character within the Bible who, let's say, or I'm not even sure how many times he's mentioned, and if it's okay for this one question, if you have time, the Satan. Who is Satan?
Well,
Who is this character that I'm supposed to come to terms with?
Satan,
What's that?
just like Gabriel, is not a name of one person, of one individual, but is a functional name that indicates the adversary, a sort of public ministry, a sort of accuser, and this function could be attributed to a man, or also, as in the book of Job, also to an Elohim. And the function of Satan had always a definite time. Was not a function for all the life of that individual. He did this function for the occasion, for that particular occasion. After that, in Isaiah 14, is named Lucifer. And Lucifer also is not an individual, but is an adjective who is carrying the light, that the prophet Isaiah attributes to one king, Babylonian king. But the scholars are disputing about who he was, because we are not sure. Nabucodonosor, Nabonido, and so on. It's only an adjective. The theologians, when created the spiritual figure of God, created also the spiritual personality, adversary of God. And so they create the figure of Satan and united this individual with Lucifer. And they made also another inconsistency. They united Satan, Lucifer, with the serpent, the snake, which temptates Eve. But this is not present in the Bible. The Bible never says the serpent was a Satan. Never. Is a later construction of the theologians, and this is important. I received complimenti. I received congratulations
Compliments.
from by Hebrew exegetes for the manner in which I spoke of this figure, because they agreed totally with me.
And the snake, I mean, I know in Gnosticism there's a massive difference and change in the viewpoint of not just the serpent, but also in God, and in what one should be seeking to do with Gnosis. And so I said it was my last question, but this will be the final thing that I'll ask you. Of all that you've taken now and all that your new understanding, this journey you've been on with this understanding of mistranslations and a better understanding of potentially what they have said, what do you believe now? What do you feel to be the most pertinent, let's say, the most pertinent truth about all that you've discovered? How does it change you?
I feel myself more free. As I said before, I don't say that God doesn't exist. I think that God could be all the energy of the universe, who is able to create all is existing. So, but I don't like to call this sort of energy God, because God remind me always to the figure of God created by theologians. And so I think the researchers of the spirituality have not to research spirituality in the Bible, because there isn't. For example, the Bible doesn't speak about soul. The Hebrew term is nephesh. Nephesh means the throat. The nephesh means the birth, the breath, sorry, the breath.
No problem.
And after, the theologians transformed this concept in soul. But in the Bible, this concept absolutely doesn't exist. I don't know if the soul exists or not, of course. It
But it's
was
not in
my
the Bible.
concern. I
Right.
don't want destroy the faith of the believers. Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
I just want that the believers know what the Bible really says, really right, so they can conduct their research in absolutely freedom, without this book that doesn't speak of God. Is a brief version, very brief version of a wider history that concerns all the world. Because the history, for example, the Genesis, as the history which is present in the people all around the world. So this history must be substantially true, but doesn't speak about the creation. The first verb in the Bible is bara, which is always translated with to create. But bara is quoted in the Bible more than 30 times, and never means to create. Never means to create from nothing. Bara means to intervene in a pre-existent situation in order to transform this material situation according to our purpose, our necessity. And this is important. After that, could be exist God that create all the universe. But I don't know, because I don't have the yes, I don't have the intention,
The entire
the
answer.
voluntary, to study this topic, because we don't have concrete elements, concrete proof, concrete things to study the figure of the so-called God. And also there are many theologians in Italy, or for example Calvin Klein in Austria, which who tell that we don't have God on the table as an object of study, but we can only speculate about him. And I, for the moment, I prefer to read, to study this book, and to narrate what this book really says.
Mhm. I love your mission because it's similar. You know, that was our hope, is that we can give people the tools. I mean, what you're doing in letting everyone know exactly what it says and that feeling of freedom, I think, is really, really important. This is why I've always enjoyed your work, and I always enjoy speaking to you. And for everyone who is out there, of course, I don't. Your next book, is it out yet?
Sorry?
Has your book Jesus Demigod is out? I mean, Gods of the Bible. We are, of course, going to link to all of this and everything down here. But your next book.
Dirati che lo prendi, ti sta chiedendo di quello.
Ah, there, it's out. It's behind you.
No, Gesù che mi...
That one, yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure next time, and we, as we've said before, it would be an honor for us and a pleasure for us to come and interview you in person and maybe have a longer talk so we can get even more deeply, because I know you have a great amount of knowledge. So we will link to everything down below, of course. But Mauro, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you to you for inviting me. It was a very, very, very pleasure to speak with you. I hope we can meet each other in Turin, and we can speak face to face.
Yes.
About many topics. And I hope that can be soon.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So we will link to all of this, of course, right down below. A big thanks to Mauro. And guys, go check out everything. He has an excellent YouTube channel as well. That will all be linked in the description box. And we will see you guys soon.